I didn't like The Rise of Skywalker very much. Now, being a huge Star Wars fan, I actually had reasonably manageable expectations going into this movie. I heard it wasn't great, especially for people who like The Last Jedi, like I did. But I thought it would be alright. It turns out, I wasn't right, because this movie was not good. However, that doesn't mean there were no redeemable aspects of it, and I will talk about them now using notes that I wrote down, because I am a good YouTuber. First good thing, Finn, Poe, and Rey are really good characters, and the actors have really good chemistry. They've been my favorite parts of all three movies. Watching them interact in this film was easily the best part. During the scenes on Posana, they had a lot of fun dialogue where they interacted with each other. It was a good time, and the characters have always been probably the hallmark of Star Wars, and it's nice to see in the sequel trilogy that continued with three of the main characters. Next, I'll mention another good character, mostly based on goodwill from the previous two movies, is Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren is a great character and has the only fleshed out complete arc in the sequel trilogy. He starts off purely evil and he tries to squash the conflict within himself, but eventually it wins over and he realizes that he's not Kylo Ren, he's Ben Solo. That's a satisfying arc that, while we saw coming, doesn't detract from its quality. Kylo Ren had a good arc and Adam Driver is a great actor. Next thing I liked was light speed skipping. That was really cute and really funny, and it felt like Star Wars just like racing through the stars. Light speed skipping, JJ, good stuff. Another thing, it was really funny. Sure, it wasn't always intentional. I mean, the first line we see in the opening crawl is "the dead speak." I laughed in the theater. Yikes. But there were a lot of moments of intentional humor that worked for me.
Oh, they fly now! They fly now? They fly now!
I think JJ writes comedic elements into his action films very well, which is why I think the comedy worked in this film and The Force Awakens, maybe even a little bit more than it did in The Last Jedi. Not being a huge fan of the prequel movies, even though, again, they are Star Wars and they're fun. One thing that gets a lot of praise that I'm not as huge a fan of as I used to be is the overly intricate lightsaber choreography, which, while it looks impressive, doesn't convey warrior monks who are trying to end the battle as soon as possible, but rather just show off that they know a lot of cool moves. However, in the sequel trilogy, and in this movie in particular, I feel like the lightsaber fighting is a lot more utilitarian and demonstrates that one combatant is genuinely trying to defeat the other as quickly as possible, rather than just doing a bunch of spins. I really like that. Fights between Kylo Ren and Rey were really effective, especially because of this choreography that shows that they were genuinely trying to defeat each other. Particularly Rey trying to defeat Kylo, because Kylo was never really interested in killing Rey. The last thing I liked was that we finally got confirmation that Leia had Jedi training. One of my favorite parts of like the old extended universe novels when those were canon was reading about Leia's exploits as a Jedi, especially in like the Dark Horse comics when I was reading those. I like the idea that just because you aren't the main character of the movie, you can still have Force sensitivity, which actually reminds me of one thing I forgot to write down. Finn is Force sensitive, and that's good. It'd be a huge bummer if there were no more Force sensitive people left in the galaxy, and the fact that we have confirmation that at least one exists, I think is a very positive thing, and demonstrates hope for what I assume will be the next trilogy of movies. I mean, it's the end of the Skywalker saga, but Star Wars makes too much money. They're not going to stop making Star Wars movies. So, that's all the things I liked. And sure, that took up a decent chunk of time, but that's literally everything I liked in a 2.5-hour movie in one of my favorite franchises ever created. Now, much to my chagrin, I must talk about the things that I did not enjoy, which is a lot of the movie. Alright, let's start off with the title crawl. The dead speak. I'm not going to explain that. Just starting off, the biggest middle finger to the Star Wars franchise since killing Darth Maul in the first movie. Palpatine is alive? I mean... Okay, just because you didn't like Episode 8, JJ, which I know you didn't, despite what you say, doesn't mean you just get to bring back an old villain because one villain was killed. You know who would have been a pretty good villain for this movie? Admiral Hux. Domhnall Gleeson is a great actor, and his character has demonstrated that he's dedicated to the First Order, which ties into why I don't like Hux in this movie. Despite being funny, and being, of course, well portrayed by Domhnall Gleeson, Hux is the spy in the First Order just because he's petty that Kylo Ren took over. Or one of my favorite YouTubers, Jenny Nicholson, made a point about how she expected Hux to orchestrate a coup to throw Kylo Ren out of power. And that would have been a really strong catalyst for Kylo Ren becoming Ben Solo again, and then he would try and join up with the Resistance and take down Hux and the First Order, which that way you don't have to bring back Palpatine, JJ. I'm sorry. I know JJ is not watching this video, but okay. Next up, the convoluted plot. Now let's think about the structure of this movie. Starts off with the Falcon picking up information from a spy on some random planet. Then lightspeed skipping all the way back to the Rebel base, where Rey has been training as a Jedi. Then, analyzing the intelligence, they discover that Palpatine has, in fact, returned. Again, they stress somehow, because JJ didn't want to write that bit. So, now that they know Palpatine is back, they have to figure out how to find him. And it just so happens that Rey, in reading Luke's old writings, knows that he's been trying to find the ancient planet of the Sith, where they believe Palpatine is. Now, this ancient planet of the Sith was also known by a man named Ochi, a Jedi hunter. Luke tracked Ochi to yet another desert planet, which is where our heroes now head. On this planet, they have a lovely festival, and then Lando's back, I guess, and they find Ochi's ship in the middle of the wasteland. Now, before they're sucked up by quicksand, Rey heals a snake, and they find a knife. Oh, let me talk about the knife. So, Palpatine, who hired Ochi to bring him Rey, who, I forgot to mention that I was bothered by this, is a Palpatine. And the way he instructed Ochi to bring Rey to him was to not just give him a map to get to the Sith planet, Exegol. He instead gave Ochi a knife that has the outline of the wreckage of the Death Star and writing in ancient Sith. And when you line up the knife with the wreckage of the Death Star, you can pull out a little tab thing, and it'll point to where in the wreckage of the Death Star you can find a map to Exegol. But of course, this scavenger hunt can't take us to just 2 planets. We gotta throw in a third, because while C-3PO can translate the Sith, he won't say it out loud because it's a forbidden language. They have to take him to droid Dr. Frankenstein and have his memory erased so they can access the Sith translation. They give C-3PO a death monologue. I'm not going to touch that one. They reboot C-3PO. They learn what they're supposed to do with the knife. They go to the planet with the wreckage of the Death Star. Rey finds the Sith Wayfinder. The Sith Wayfinder. Rey finds the Sith Wayfinder and suddenly encounters Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren is there to convince her to join the dark side, having failed to do that earlier in the movie, after they deleted C-3PO's memory. So Kylo's there, they have a lightsaber fight where he's not trying, and Rey really is. And then Leia decides now is the best chance to redeem her son. She lays down, she closes her eyes, and she reaches out to him through the Force, and she says, Ben. And then he stops, and he drops his lightsaber, and then Rey stabs him when he's unarmed and not attacking her. You know, the guy that she's constantly trying to prove has good in him, when he, puts down his weapon, she stabs him in the stomach. Then Leia dies for a reason, and then Rey heals Ben immediately. And he's no longer Kylo Ren because he talks to the ghost of his dad. Rey leaves alone, and Kylo's ship, and Finn and Poe, who were with her the whole time, are forced to take the Falcon back to the Resistance, this time with female Finn in tow. The writers, despite clearly making it evident that Finn is interested in Rey, can't have that happen. They just write a female version of himself to be a sleeper love interest in the second act of this movie. So Rey goes to Luke's planet. Oh, she's worried she's evil. She's a Palpatine. Oh no. Oh god, I forgot that she fake out killed Chewie. Oh my god. God, this movie is bad. So she decides she's going to exile herself on Luke's planet. She burns Kylo's ship. She's ready to never leave. But then Luke's ghost shows up and catches the lightsaber in his Force hand and tells her to not do that. And then he raises the X-Wing out of the water, which has been there for decades. And she flies to Exegol, but sends a map back to her colleagues so they can get there too. So she goes there, she meets Palpatine, they talk for a while, and then he's like, oh, you have to join me, and if you kill me, then you're a Sith, haha, I win. And there's a battle going on, and I don't know if you've seen Return of the Jedi, but it's that. It's just Return of the Jedi. That goes on, and then Kylo shows up, and they use their Force link, which I like this part. And she puts her lightsaber behind her back, and then it appears in Ren's hand, and he kills the Knights of Ren, and then they go to take on Palpatine together, but they just don't, and Palpatine easily bests them until Rey has 2 lightsabers, lightnings him to death. You might think, oh, okay, she won in a very stupid way, sure, but she won. They're just going to celebrate with the Resistance. The Empire is dead. The First Order, the New Order, it's all dead. Only good people are left. But no, that's not where it ends. Rey doesn't celebrate together with her new family that she's found after being abandoned. She instead goes to Tatooine, the original desert planet, and decides to go to Luke's old home, which last time we saw it had been burned by stormtroopers, to bury his and Leia's lightsabers. Conveniently, after she does this, a woman walks up to her and says, "Who are you?" And she says, "Oh, I'm Rey." Rey who? And out of the many possible answers to this question, like, oh, I'm just Rey. I'm Rey of the Resistance, Rey Solo, or Rey Palpatine, where she's owning the legacy of her family but determined to make something better of it. She looks to her side, sees the Force ghosts of Luke and Leia, and declares herself Rise Skywalker. And that's just what I mentioned as I was running through the plot linearly. Now we're going to do a lightning round of things that were bad. 1. Finn's most spoken line is just Rey's name, and he always yells it with exactly the same inflection. 2. That really awkward kiss that then Kylo dies after. 3. Luke's lightsaber is back together now, even though it was destroyed in a pretty poignant moment in the last film. 4. General Pride. Why? He's just General Hux. 5. Exegol is a dumb name. 6. General Hux gets treated like a nothing despite being one of the main villains of the last 2 movies. 7. Evil Rey. I even wrote it in that sarcastic upper lowercase thing because they did nothing with it. 7. I think C-3PO has the most lines in this movie. 8. How did the Emperor just have thousands of manned Star Destroyers lying around on his planet? Who are the people flying them? How did they get to Exegol? And 8. The biggest thing for me was the blatant retconning of The Last Jedi, which, again, is a movie I love. Now, a lot of people don't like that movie, clearly, including J.J. Abrams himself. However, part of being a good writer is working off of what you already have. My players get mad at me if I retcon something in Dungeons & Dragons. Star Wars is one of the most popular film franchises of all time, and yet J.J. Abrams decides that he can just retcon a movie he didn't like very much instead of trying to write around it. Oh, Rey's parents weren't nobodies. They chose to be nobodies. Remember Rose Tico, how she was a big part of that last movie? They just didn't have her in this one. She had 3 lines. She was sidelined. She didn't get to go on the Falcon. I can't remember where I saw it, but I once read that this is the first Star Wars movie written exclusively by Reddit. Damn if that didn't hurt, because God, it's true. A lot of people didn't like Rose, so instead of rewriting the problematic aspects of her character and ignoring the people who hated her for her race or gender, they just bowed down to those people and pretty much wrote her out of the franchise. The writing is bad. The fan service is excessive. It was not a good movie, and I would tell you not to see it because we shouldn't see bad movies, but it's Star Wars. No matter how many times it's just terrible, I always come back to it. I first saw Star Wars when I was 5 years old. Star Wars is probably my favorite series of all time, and no matter what happens, I'll keep seeing the new ones. I will always love Star Wars, even though The Rise of Skywalker was a bad movie. Alright, so that's why I don't like The Rise of Skywalker very much. Thank you for watching, have a great day, and I will see you next time.